When talking about Pokemon, there's some key things that we need to understand. And the first thing is the franchise was never really all about telling compelling stories in the way that we expected them to. Now, talking about Pokemon, the gaming franchise that I grew up with, I see so many videos talking about the rise and fall of this franchise. Even though, in all honesty, this franchise will never go away. But today I'm going to be talking about the mainline games. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Now, when I mention mainline games, I'm talking about the main canon, not any side games like Pokemon Go or even Detective Pikachu. But with that being said, we're going to start from the beginning. So, what was the sole purpose of the Pokemon franchise? The sole purpose was to sell cards, sell merchandise, sell the games, the clothing line, and anything that has anything to do with Pokemon. Pokemon is the top grossing franchise on this planet, and that is really saying something. But with that being said, let's go ahead and discuss where Pokemon actually fell off. And let's go ahead and start with the golden age, the age that most people grew up with, generations one through three. So generation one, Fire Red, Leaf Green, and Pokemon Blue. Those are kind of the games that most of us kind of start out with. Now I started out with generation two, but when talking about the downfall of Pokemon, or the so-called downfall, as many people like to put it, I know there's a lot of people saying that the franchise has become too lazy, less ambitious. Well, I'm going to surprise you with this video because going back to play these older games, yeah, you can feel the creativity, you can feel the love and passion. But however, you notice how the franchise didn't really change all that much. Gameplay wise, I can summarize the plot of all of them in just a few words. And here it goes. Point A, you begin your journey as a 10-year-old trainer. Point B, you fight the evil villains, you stop the legendary, you beat the champion and the Elite Four. And finally, point C, you got the post game, got to catch them all. That's it. That is the plot of every Pokemon game, summarized in a few words. Now, I know a few of you might get upset and tell me, well, Generation 5 was the greatest out of all of them. And to that, I have to say this. While Generation 5 was kind of the peak of the franchise, in my opinion, I mean, I guess you could say that Generation 5 was kind of the peak, or the last time I actually cared about telling a decent story. But you got to keep in mind, the whole point was to sell a whole bunch of cards and merchandise, right? And Generation 5, even though a lot of us hype up that generation as being the magnum opus of this franchise, it sold the least amount of copies compared to the other games in this franchise. Shocker? Yeah, it really is a shocker. So tell me this. How come the best one in the franchise, that being Black White and Black and White 2, how come the best ones in the franchise sold the least amount of copies? And to that, I gotta say, being ambitious is a bit scary because you could tell that Pokemon was trying to mature with his audience. You saw that with Jack and Daxter, Crash Bandicoot, and look what happened to those franchises. Jack and Daxter disappeared off the face of the earth. Crash Bandicoot had to take a 10-year hiatus, only to come back and do the same thing, a reboot. And with franchises like The Legend of Zelda, Super Mario, we notice, yeah, these characters they sort of change, but the formula kind of remains the same. In Zelda, I can summarize that formula too. You save a princess that has been captured. You go on this journey, this odyssey, going through dungeons. That has been the majority of every Zelda game. Same thing with Mario. You save the princess. With Sonic, you go on this journey. You stop whatever evil's behind it. Every single franchise has a formula. Yet when it goes to Pokemon, they followed the same formula, and look what happened. They sold so many copies, so many cards, so much merchandise. So when it came to Black and White 2, when they tried to do something different, how come that one failed? Because being ambitious, like I said, is either you get it right or you don't. And while Pokemon Black 2, White 2, Black 1, and White 1 are considered the best in the franchise, I hate to say it, they were objectively the worst ones when it comes to selling. Now, like I said, the golden age with Gens 1 through 3, I would like to put Generation 5 in the silver age along with Gen 4. I didn't think that Generation 4 was even that good. I think Generation 4 was one of the worst ones, except for Platinum. Gen 3, I know we all the too much water being, but besides that, Generation 3 was decent. Gen 1 and Gen 2 was kind of the same if you put them next to each other. Now, when it comes to fans talking about the downfall, Generation 6, which I played this as a child, X and Y, they needed more time. A Pokemon Z, not the recent one that came out, but a Pokemon Z would have really made this generation one of the greatest. But they decided to skip over that. Besides that, Pokemon X and Y sales wise, it did decent. You know how they tried to go for a more lighter tone, even though there's a murderous ginger psychopath that wants to destroy the world because it's not beautiful enough, which is funny. Afterwards, I will count Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire as being next, but that's kind of a spin-off. Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, both of them did decent. My favorite one is not the first Sun and Moon, but the Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. I get the feeling that one kind of expanded the gameplay where you travel through different dimensions. Afterwards, I like to call that era the modern era or the 3D era. Generation 6 and 7. Now, the Dark Ages, the Switch Age, oh boy. Generation 8, Sword and Shield. I used to have this love hate relationship for it. But now going back to it, I didn't think the game was bad or good. It was just boring. That's all I got to say. And they had one of the worst villains in the entire franchise. But with that being said, you had Legends Arceus, you had the Diamond and Pearl remakes, which sold well because, of course, they did as a reboot. Now, Generation 9, that's where I'll end this Dark Age for right now. until Gen 10 releases. And Generation 9, just look up the other videos on YouTube. You see a whole bunch of people tearing this apart. So, in conclusion, even though Pokemon had a whole bunch of fuck ups, it's still on top. And I hate to say this, Pokemon didn't really go through a downfall, just kind of a steadily decline, rise. It's going to keep rising with sales. People are going to keep deleting each other over Pokemon cards. But with that being said, that's just my opinion. Where do you think Pokemon kind of slipped off? And do you think Pokemon will eventually get better and care about storytelling again? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you guys later.